So the whole reason that we wanted to do this panel was because networking can be kind of overwhelming, and it's a really important part of building a career in game audio. So we sort of wanted to demystify it a little bit, and by the time that you leave this panel, we're hoping that you'll have a really clear idea of how to start and where to go building your network. So first I'll talk about a couple goals that we want. The first thing is to actually learn what it means to build a network in a really clear way, and how to use that network to actually further your creative endeavors. Finally, we'll talk about some of the resources we have available to get you started, and hopefully you'll make at least one MAG friend. So actually, let's introduce ourselves. I'll start. I'm Spencer Bambrick. I'm a composer and sound designer. I do music and sound for Flash games, PC games, and mobile. I actually got started at Serial Lab Studios after I graduated. I sent an email to Gina Zdanowicz, who couldn't be here, and I got hired as an intern. So we should probably talk about maybe how we got our start or what path we're on, because we have a diverse panel.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Everybody good? You having a good MAGFest? Okay, good. Good. Awesome. My name is Alexander Brandon. It's an honor for me to be invited to this by Spencer. I am, Vice President of Game Audio Network Guild. I'm a composer, sound designer, voice actor. I've been doing this for, around 20-something years or so. How I got my start was a buddy of mine was programming a multi-parallax scrolling shooter on the PC way back in 1990-something, like 90, 91 actually. But that eventually turned into Tyrion by Epic Mega Games, and that is, we were at the time when not as many people were doing what as many people are doing now. But I will talk a lot more about that as we go forward.
Hey, I'm Will Roger. I'm a composer. I used to work at LucasArts for a while, so I did Star Wars: The Old Republic and all right, Star Wars: First Assault and Monkey Island Special Edition, and Dead Island 2 and Lara Croft and the Temple of Osiris. My first gig, depending on how you want to define your first gig, but I'll talk about Lucas. I got hired at LucasArts because I attended a audio gang breakfast, actually, at GDC, which was attended by no one else besides me and the music supervisor of LucasArts. And so we hung out, we kibitzed a little bit, and we hit it off, and about a year later, a music implementer position opened up, and it was sort of like one of those like, hey, who do we have? Why not Will Roger? And then the rest is history.
So is the game audio, and how'd you get there? Is that where we are?
Yeah.
I lost track. Okay.
Whatever you want to talk about.
Sure. I'm Bonnie Bogovich. Hi. I'm currently the audio lead at a company called Shell Games in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we do a lot of educational, wacky stuff. I got an yeah. Thank you. We do mostly educational things like Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood and stuff, but we're currently getting more popular in VR, so if anyone's heard of I Expect You to Die, we've been working on a game about telekinesis with spies, and it's really fun. But how I actually that's my actual first gig in game audio as a paid full-time person, and I've been there for 5 years this March. And I got that job by making a zombie opera a while ago. So I have a background in doing mostly stage management, production, multimedia design that goes with musical, theatrical things. And for a while, arts kind of dried up and funding wasn't very good, so a bunch of friends of mine who do film and theater, we decided to write our own show. And because we're from Pittsburgh, and that's where George Romero is from, we wrote an opera about the George Romero Night of the Living Dead zombies. And we got funded somehow and ended up with grant money and nonprofit status. And part of our show was having a projected film of zombies attacking people that was synchronized to the music, so we had a chorus of dead people. And people who around the city who auditioned to be extras included employees of Shell Games. So suddenly I ended up having like half of the company of Shell Games in my project. And the VP of art, who is now my boss, was designing my posters for me. So whenever a job opened up in game audio, I was like one of the weirdest audio people they knew, and they were like, let's bring in the zombie girl. So I've been there 5 years. That's my weird version of that.
Cool.
Thanks.
My name is Laura Intravia, and I work in the video game industry primarily as a performer and arranger and orchestrator. I got my start from a totally lucky break. I performed at an anime convention called Otakon a couple years in a row when I was still in college. And one of my videos of my performances went viral, and Tommy Tallarico saw it and invited me to perform with the touring concert Video Games Live, which led to me working not only as a performer for them, but as an arranger of different segments as well, and led to connecting with Pokemon Symphonic Evolutions, which I also sing with. And lately I've been doing a lot of recording from my home studio as a remote recording artist, and working on like piano arrangements of different games and releasing albums of those soundtracks. And it's awesome. I love what I do.
Hey everyone, I'm Sebastian Wolf. I'm a composer, orchestrator, arranger, pianist. I'm not really on the same path as a lot of these guys, you know, prolific composers working for LucasArts and, you know, Shell Game. I don't really know if there's like a specific starting point of my career. I've always been a pianist. I've, you know, loved, you know, arranging and performing, you know, video game covers. Go figure, MAGFest. And about 6 years ago, I tried to find a way to actually monetize and, you know, license these things and, you know, give tribute to the composers. So I co-founded a company called Louder, which, you know, licenses video game music and makes it possible for cover song artists to put all of that stuff up on iTunes legally and sell it. On the freelance side, I arrange, I orchestrate, I do projects like Materia Collective and Project Estadi, where, you know, we fly across the country, hire orchestras, and, you know, put out high-end cover song projects. It's awesome. Honored to be here. Hi.
Okay, so we're going to kind of go over the basics for a little while, and then we'll hopefully have a bunch of time left at the end for some Q&A, because I think that's really important for a topic like this. But first, let's just talk about what we actually mean by networking, because it's sometimes pretty vague. So there's an old saying, all things being equal, people want to do business with their friends. All things not being equal, people still want to do business with their friends. So what that basically means is a network is really just a group of friends that really have the potential to create opportunities for each other. And one important note is that it kind of works both ways. So the more opportunities you can create for people in your network, the more valuable you'll be in theirs. So let's get to the first question, which is how to make your first MAG friend. So basically, you have no credits. You don't really know many people or anybody. What's the best way to just get started right away? How do you meet your first person that you're going to use to build up your network?
You want me to answer that first?
Yes.
Well, first you sound like John St. John, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
Let's tribute to John St. John, who's not here this year. I have a different perspective from people that are newer in the industry, because if you're in an industry that isn't that big, it's a lot easier to make connections with other people by just emailing or making phone calls. But having said that, emailing and making phone calls is actually still a really good way to initially connect with people. And where does that come from? How on earth, where do I just go, or how do I start? Well, start with what inspires you. For example, the guy sitting next to me has written pieces of music that I really, I'm just like, how the hell does he do it? What was the thing that Josh Welchel did that was tribute to, Songs for the Cure. Okay, so these are, all the proceeds go to fighting cancer, right? Okay, so there's been 2 of these albums, and one of them, what was the name of your song? Sorry. Say that. Yes. So if you could, I think the songs are still available to listen to, and if they are, just see if you can search that tune out. Here I am coming from this world of like writing little, you know, with little drawn out notes and an ad-lib score. But this guy roped in a bunch of live instrumentalists and recorded some unbelievable sounding stuff. And so that inspires me, right? So, and between that and like, whether it's old school being inspired by Hirokazu Tanaka, you find where that inspiration is, and you let that drive you to just be like, I want to reach out to this person. And for 100 people that may like not ever respond to you, there will be at least one person that actually does, if you can believe that will say, hey, Bear McCreary, who happens to be here, happens to be an amazingly nice guy who's also amazingly busy, but hey, he might just respond to your email and say, hey, I need this for this other project, and why don't you come help me out? So that's my advice as far as like, just you can grasp at straws, but the things that drive you, the passions that start from here, are really what make doing the work that's required and actually getting that connection worthwhile, and almost as though it's not work. So.
I'm still blushing from Alex's comment, but I will say, I mean, I'm not sure if this is even an answer to this question, but I just wanted to tell a brief story of something that did happen at MAGFest like last year or 2 years ago or something. We have impromptu room jams where, people bring their music, their instruments, and then just play. Let's just play some Chrono Trigger music. Let's just play whatever. We had one in our room, and I think you were there too, actually.
I was there.
Yeah, and you were
I was in that room.
And Patty as well. Yeah, and Kristen, yeah, hey. And I'm not exaggerating. At least half of that room I ended up hiring for my Tomb Raider soundtrack because they were so good, and I was just like, I need a woodwind player. I need, I need violinists, I need bass, and they were all incredible. So I was like, why not hire people that I know, that I'm friends with, And I met all of them at MAGFest. So I mean, it's all about just have fun first, and then worry about the professional, stuff later. And I think that's how networks really work.
Oh, it's hard to follow that one, especially because I was in that party. That was an awesome jam evening. I guess I'll throw more of like one of the professional sides, which Alex knows about. So I'm a member of a thing called GANG, which is the Game Audio Network Guild, and they try to organize a lot of meetups and stuff like GDC. And we've had a couple unofficial gang hangs that have gone on at MAGFest for a couple years. Actually, Spencer helped form the first one, and I kind of helped co-form it, and then Alex helped co-form the last one. And I remember running into this guy, Sebastian, on the end at something called Game Sound Con. We were both in an FMOD class together. I think that was it.
Times.
Yeah, good crazy times of software. And I was like, hey, we should totally hang out one day. And I end up at MAGFest, and I'm walking down the street, and Spencer and me are like texting about the gang hang. Remember the gang hang, it's very important. Like, okay. And I see this guy going up the escalator. I'm like, hey, Sebastian, there's this event for game audio. Let's go hang out. And hours later, we end up at a great table. We're running into some awesome people. More hours later, we end up in your hotel room, and we're jamming. What Does the Fox Say? Happened somewhere around at 3 in the morning. It was insane. And while I was sitting there, I ended up meeting a friend of Sebastian's who also works at Louder named Jesse Buddington. And I was talking about how I'm an opera singer on the side, and we were like, man, there's never anything fun for opera people to do at game conventions. And Liz Rischel, who's in the audience somewhere, her boyfriend on our car ride over, she's part of Zombie Opera, he was like, you guys should totally do an opera for like MAGFest and make it like Plumber of Seville or something and just change the words to be about Mario. I'm like, no one will. I don't know. But talking to Jesse in that hotel room while people were jamming, we started a conversation and we started to slowly meet some people. Months later, we wrote Super Smash Opera, which we premiered at MAGFest last year, and now this year, it all comes full circle. A lot of the orchestra pit, which we ended up recruiting, were part of the jam session playing What Does the Fox Say in his hotel room 2 years ago. And it all started out with a conversation of, hi, my name's Bonnie, my name's Sebastian. Let's learn about FMOD and hang out someday. We kind of got to know each other. We got to network. It all started at a gang hang through Game Audio Network Guild and just meeting people and reconnecting and finding something in common. So you never know who someone you're playing What Does the Fox Say will lead to, or someone who's in a class with you. It's just finding someone that you have something in common with and things you want to work. Oh, and he also was our orchestrator for Smash Opera this year. So we did pull Sebastian back in.
Yeah.
But it's like, you never know, is all I'm saying.
The secret to networking is to hang out at my bedroom late at night.
Just hang out with this guy.
At 3 a.m. specifically, then
Yeah. Just don't, if you go to MAGFest, just don't go to sleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have anything specific to add to that, except that I think the common theme between all these stories is that you want to find a gathering where people meet for fun that you have like minds, you have similar interests, right? Because you're going to make friends with people that have similar interests to you. For me, it's Video Games Live. I met most of the people here saw me in a VGL show, and then I said hello to them backstage or at the meet and greet, and that's how I made my connections. You know, it doesn't have to be MAGFest necessarily. It could be any convention where you get together with a bunch of people that like video game music, and you never know where it can lead. But I think, again, the theme here is that you want to establish a community in a very organic way, which is just to make friends, and that will lead to good, positive, you know, outcomes hopefully down the line because you met these people in a really honest, genuine way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much everything that everyone said already. Following up on one of the last things that you said, Laura, if there aren't any opportunities, make your own. One of the things that happened last year, which was so cool, after the E3 announcement for the Final Fantasy VII remake, I posted on, I know, right? I posted a thing on Facebook, just like, oh, you know, it'd be cool, you know, if, you know, a couple of friends, you know, did a cover album, which is very small and very not huge. And 3 months later, we ended up putting out a 87-track mega album, you know, with about 250 artists, all who contributed, arranged, produced, sang on, wrote lyrics to, on this one project, which started out with like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if blank? So it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, you have to go to the events and, you know, meet the people. You know, find ways to make your own opportunities happen by doing the things that you're already passionate about and let other people know. That's been just like one of the coolest experiences, just bringing people together, you know, with projects like that. So make your own thing happen. Thanks.
Cool. So sort of a follow-up question to that is there necessarily specific people that we should be, you actually talked about emailing and calling potentially, but is there like specifically people that you would be looking to add to your network, or is it more something that you just want to make happen organically, like you said, Laura?
I have an answer for this. People that are awesome. And that's literally, I know you expect it to be like, oh, you have to befriend like the audio director and I think that's total, you know, horse crap. I think you should always befriend people that you get along with, that are the best at what they do, and that's how you build a network. Because eventually, you know, you'll get to a situation, you know, like I was talking about, where it's like, I need a score, and I need someone, you know, to play this instrument for me. I need like orchestrators, I need like whatever. And so befriending other musicians is actually, you know, incredibly important. It's not about competition. It's not about like, oh, you know, you'll hear some people giving advice like, oh, you know, you avoid other musicians. You need to make friends with the game developers, and you do need to make friends with game developers. But knowing musicians that you can count on, that you can depend on, you know, at moments, not to embarrass Laura, but I remember I had a gig 2 years ago, I think yeah, and the developer, and I'm not even joking, it was during DDC, and the night before the score was due, they asked, could you have a live vocalist added to this? And I'm like, what do you expect me to do with one night's notice? So I hit up a friend of mine, and she was like, no, of course I can't do it. But talk to Laura Intravia. So I was like, hey, Laura, I'm Will Roche, you know, could you please do this? And she said, yeah, okay, sure, I can do this. And she delivered, and it was absolutely brilliant. The developers loved it, and you know, that's what networking is all about, is just knowing these people.
I don't know if you know this, but I was incredibly ill when I got that email. I was like, ugh, I pulled myself out of bed. I was like, my point is that I didn't say no because I was worried I couldn't do it. I said yes because I wanted to make this opportunity into something that could lead to something down the line. So even though I wasn't feeling great, even though it might not have been the best vocal ever, clearly he was happy with it. So,
So it all works.
So always, I mean, know your abilities. Like, don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to embarrass yourself. But if you think you can muscle through something when you're not feeling your best, or it's maybe like unfamiliar territory for you, say yes and figure it out. Make your own, make your own thing.
Yeah. And to follow up with that, don't overcommit, know your boundaries. Coming from the guy who runs 50 concurrent projects.
Yes.
Okay, so moving more into the second area, how do I sort of present myself when I'm trying to build up my network? You sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, so I kind of think I know the direction that you're going to go with this, but are there situations where you want to try and remain a little bit more business-oriented or professional, or is it sort of a range of situations? No, I just, this is for the panel.
You want to go first?
I'll think about mine.
You'll think about yours.
Yeah.
I think that, so there's, I'll give an example of just a situation where I was already working with somebody. His name is Mark Morgan. Anybody here familiar with Planescape Torment? Okay, so he did the soundtrack for Planescape Torment. He's working on the soundtrack for Torment Tides of Numenera. It's a Kickstarter project, and he's a really good composer. And he has plosives, excuse me, and he has done some really, really good work. He also works in television. He worked on Under the Dome, and right now he's working on Aquarius. So we were talking about what's the schedule for the project going to be like until we actually ship. And we were saying like, okay, well, we want to ship by this date. It's not announced yet, so otherwise I'd just say what it was. But they were saying like, okay, so and I said, what does that mean we give Mark as far as his deadline for when we want to be able to have space in order to take his stuff and manipulate it and make it work and mix it and everything. And they said, well, how about we give him a month? And we're talking 33 minutes of music. So a lot of people hear that and they're like, oh my gosh. And so I was like, I'll throw it out there. Depending on what he's working on right now, a composer can do a minute of music a day or maybe a little bit more than that. And that's not too unreasonable. It is fast, but it's not crazy. So let's see what happens. His response was, you guys waited 3 years to do this. I'm working on Aquarius. Oh my God, what the hell? I can't believe this is going on. And so I wrote him back, and I said, well, and I gave him like a bunch of like, here's the milestones we've had in the past, and he's like, is there any room at all? And I said, well, yeah, there might be some, and then he wrote another one on top of in response to when I said, well, the milestones that we've given you in the past, you've asked for, in some cases, a little extra time because of some other commitments that you have, which for me, usually I have to do everything that I possibly can in order to meet the deadlines that a client gives me. But in his case, the fans are the ones that want this guy. We give him some wiggle room. We give him some allowance. And I said, like, well, that's kind of what we're going, but we're also trying to steer back from that so that you have more of a urge to finish, and we can iterate as we go forward. So I said, I just wanted to avoid more time being spent. And his response was, oh, so now I'm holding up the game. It's me. Huh? Oh, great. Yeah, I'm the one that's causing the game to be late. So I responded to that with, well, this is starting to seem like a YouTube comment section. So I'm going to call you on the phone. And I did. And he has like a voice like this. And he's like, I'm really sorry. I just really wanted to, be able to get it done in time. And so he's very meek on the phone. But in the emails, of course, he can insult with impunity and say whatever the heck he wants. So that's just a little bit of guidance. You have to feel out the attitude of the people that you're working with. Like, say if you're working with, Ruby, the James Landino folks, or the people that are doing Red versus Blue, what are they called? What are they called?
Red
Rooster Teeth, yeah. If you're working with the Rooster Teeth people, yeah, you could just be like, yeah, fuck yeah, man, it's going to be awesome, it's going to be great, this is awesome. But at the same time, I'm not going to actually say those things to those people. You have to meet them, or at least you have to get a bead on what what the kind of culture is at the place that they're working at. If you want to go to a Riot Games, if you want to write music for Riot Games, you have to live, breathe, eat, and sleep League of Legends and be able to describe everything about your League of Legends character, which I can't because I don't play League of Legends, so I don't go beg Riot to write music for them. But in any case, the way you should address stuff is usually, I don't actually mean to say, yeah, go fuck yeah, right with your first email to somebody. You should present yourself in such a way to say, hey, I'm passionate, I really love what you guys do, I really dig, the kind of games that you've done in the past, blah, 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 blah. And you can keep it, kind of casual as far as like describing that passion, but don't go too casual. There you go. I've kind of whinged on about that. Sorry about that, folks.
Yeah.
I had one. I had to think about it. I wasn't sure where that was going to go. I guess going more back to in person or on.
Oh, that's just don't.
Actually, mine was actually going to be more about in person or online. So one thing I've noticed more and more, especially there were some questions on this whenever I did some mentoring at a Game SoundCon this past fall, and there were some people asking for tips about how to properly network. And some of them actually shoved a business card in my face before they asked that question. And I'm like, well, first off, if you're trying to meet people to work in game audio, you have to, have a little personality and show that you want to have a conversation first. And don't just automatically show that you are desperate and seeking out money as soon as humanly possible. Find something in common with the person you're talking to, have a conversation. Maybe you like the same game, maybe they're working on something and you're really passionate about what it is, but don't start your conversation with, my name is this, and just wave it in their head. And especially don't walk away when you're done. Because I can't tell you how many cards whenever like Shell Games might maybe be looking for audio help that people just send me stuff and it's like one sentence, here's my thing, bye. And no. I mean, game audio are people too. We have lives, we have emotions and feelings, and if you're rude to us, we will probably try to forget you or not write you back. So, I don't know. Like, always be ready to talk about yourself in more of a conversational manner, I would say, especially if you're meeting a fellow audio person, and find something common, and they will remember more the conversation they had with you and things you talked about than that little piece of paper. So maybe you'll, there's an email later like, you had a really great talk about the benefits of theremins and how they should be in more science fiction things. I've actually had this talk with someone before, and later we connected in another email, and it's like, hey, the theremin girl. I'm like, yeah, theremin, yeah, theremin. And it's like you have that little link of something nerdy that you both like, but then actual more business-like conversations came later, but it's that little hook of you're both nerds that think theremins are the best thing in the universe that they remember. So, no waving of cards, find an actual conversation, and be a human being.
That was good.
Yeah.
That was a good answer.
So that also, that
Sorry.
is going to overlap into a little bit later. We're going to talk about some of the don'ts of networking, which I think is probably a rich area. But to sort of follow up on that, how does that compare with in-person interactions versus online interactions, which I think a lot of people have to deal with now more so than maybe in the past?
Following up on Alex's story, the way you present yourself online should probably match the way you present yourself, say, over the phone, in person. Definitely be personable. Be, like Bonnie said, be a human being and make sure that, the way you want to be perceived is the way you present yourself.
Yeah.
And be really conscious about doing that. And what was the question?
Online
Scroll
versus
back.
in person.
Yeah,
Right.
online versus in person.
I guess quickly going back to the thing before Sebastian went off of my thing, was that little piece of paper, if you do have that good conversation and they actually will go and Google you later, make sure that you have an online presence. Even if it's like a simple page with a couple samples or things that back up that you weren't lying about who you said you were when you talked to that person. And try to keep it, up to date, but don't throw every single sample in the universe that you've ever done. Pick what you feel best expresses yourself, not, I don't know.
Curate.
Yes, curate whatever you have and be proud of some things that maybe didn't make it into a game, but you felt that was you. Like, put what is you out there. Yeah.
Just a quick thing about your in-person versus online. I think that's a very good point. I'm actually, I don't know if this is sailing like against the current, but I would actually say that it should be a little different. And the reason being that in person, you can get a sense of things like, and this is going to sound silly, but it's actually very important, is English their first language? That's actually a very important thing to consider. When I write emails, you can't be certain that everyone that this email is going to go to or be forwarded to is going to be, completely 100% naturally fluent in English. And so it's very important. I write very boring, but like very succinct and, very professional, whatever, emails, because you never know if someone's going to have trouble with like, some colloquialism or some idiom that you've used. So it's very important to make sure that you do have an email skill. It's very different than speaking extemporaneously in person.
The other thing I can think of that I actually did this myself and felt really stupid about it was I wanted to, so the idea of like cold calling or cold emailing, right, can be kind of scary, but like it can also lead to work. Like it's certainly not out of the question. Like a few years ago, I decided I wanted to try doing more recording for soundtracks. I was like, all right, let me just look up a bunch of games that have a sound that I like, and that was important. If I had just like spammed every game studio out there, like regardless of what their style actually was, it looked pretty stupid, right? If I sent in like my vocal tracks to something that was like maybe a studio that does everything that's like really electronic, like that I would have no place there, right? That makes me look really uninformed. So you don't want to look like you haven't done your research on their company and what their sound is, right? And that goes for not only pursuing like a studio, but like an independent composer as well. I actually had a lot of luck with going on Kickstarter campaigns for video games where the game is still in production, so it could potentially lead to work for me if the soundtrack's not done yet. Because this is what I did that was really silly. I emailed a bunch of composers of games, and they emailed me back and said, well, it's already been implemented, so sorry. So it made more sense for me to be aware of how far along in production the game was, and the theme of this is know exactly what you want to get out of the studio and what the studio is all about, because the more it looks like you did your research, the more committed you look as a team player, as a worker, that you actually investigated this and made this look like something that, this is something you're interested in. But but you also are going to find a work environment that you want to work in, because like if you potentially looked up some studio that like you really weren't a good fit for, but like miraculously got your foot in the door and then didn't know how to proceed with like what they were asking you to do. And I'm speaking of course from the perspective of a recording artist, but I think it is true for composers as well. Like you want to send your work to the right place so that you yourself are happy working in the studio, and that you're not going to feel like, oh my god, like what have I gotten myself into? Like this isn't my style at all. But yeah, that's one thing I would recommend. Know who you're talking to as best you can.
That's sort of a good transition point, because the next topic was going to be how to start making your network work for you. Like, let's say you've actually been to MAGFest a few years, you've started making a bunch of friends. How do you start turning that over into lucrative, creative endeavors?
I think that the ways that I found to be successful is actually less about. Actually, I would totally not even use that as a question. No, I'm just no. What that did is that actually inspired me to think about the things that lead to successful projects, right? And one of those things is to create. Like uniqueness. And when I say create uniqueness, I mean like. Don't just put out tracks on SoundCloud and say, here's my new track on SoundCloud. One of the things that, you know, as an independent production house of audio that I've been trying to do is just like, okay, what brings a unique quality? What, you know, makes it so that you can, some people can talk about you and say that's what makes this person stand out. It's not just, you know, brilliant music writing or really good voice acting or good sound design. One thing I wanted to do was like use Unity, and now it's possible to use Unreal to create a web-based game, and why not just create, you know, put audio in there for people to use as my demo reel, right? And like yes, it's a lot more effort, but at the same time, it puts the stuff that you do in such context that they're not listening to something linear, and I still haven't really seen that done that much. So, you know, once you gain a network, and once you're part of, say, you know, like the people that you meet at MAGFest, and maybe they're on a mailing list, or maybe there's just friends on Facebook that you want to communicate with in terms of just creating a growing list of people that you want to release this really cool product that you just created yourself out with. I mean, Materia and Chronicles of Time and all this stuff that people are doing that are Herculean efforts for charity, and then like hardly any, you know, take back. It's just because of the passion involved. Means that if you have personal internal passion about your own production stuff, that you can probably do something similar. And it's not, it certainly isn't easy, but that's my recommendation.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story. I was on this forum, I think it's defunct Game Audio Forum. It's pretty much, yeah. Well, there used to be a forum called Game Audio Forum. And one of the posters there, on his signature, it said audio director. And I figured, oh, audio directors hire composers, you know? So I emailed him and I said, hey, I'd like to send a demo to you. What is the preferred format? And he said, just send me a link to MP3, that's fine. And I heard nothing back. Not even a response like, I got this, or anything like that. Absolutely nothing. 8 months later, he asks me, he just calls me up on the phone, not even email response, and asks me, could you write like some trailer music for Hellgate London? And I was like, yeah, of course, you know. And where I'm going with this is patience is really the answer to this question, I think, above anything else. You know, you should definitely make it known that you are interested in working with someone. It should definitely not be a surprise that you're, you know, looking for work or whatever. But at the same time, you shouldn't expect to, you know, go to like a game developer conference and just walk away with a gig like it's just, you know, nothing. You have to be very patient. You know, people have said the gestation period for getting your first, you know, serious work in the industry can be as much as, like, you know, 2 years, 3 years. And you just have to be patient about it. You just have to understand that you have to chip away constantly, make all those new connections as much as you can, and make real, serious friends.
Yeah, and I think especially like a smaller company, it's more like some of the indie companies like the ones that I work at, Shell Games. For a long time, the company was only about 20 people, and the budget is already kind of thin, and they had one audio person for a while who eventually left, and it turned out she was gone for like four or 5 months. And work just kept piling up, and they never actually even got around to posting the job that I found out about, and I just started throwing my resume in. But it comes down to, you have no idea how a company's HR department works, or how many desks it has to pass before someone says that the budget for actually bringing on audio help is more important than catering or a coffee or paper supplies. So you just have to sometimes be patient and remember that just because maybe you know someone in there and they say, yes, they've pushed something, they may have no control over it after that point. So it's just being polite and patient, and if you ever do check in, try not to be super not, rude or pokey about it, like, hey, I haven't heard anything, hey, because then all they'll start to remember instead of you're that person who put in a resume is that's that annoying person who keeps getting more and more agitated every couple of weeks, and they've been asking every day, we should just shred this. So, be kind, patient, and if you do have to prod, if you're really passionate about a job, just be a human being, and remember that whoever's looking at your paperwork is also a human being, and when they do finally look at all those resumes, and I've been in this position now that we've started bringing on more help, is that person will suddenly have over 50 resumes of different musicians, and they have to listen to all of your reels and look at all of your paperwork, and it comes down to formatting, do they sound professional in an email, do they have a good reel, can they even start, are they in the same state as you? So you never know all the elements someone is considering before they pick someone.
So because I feel like all of us have actually contributed to collab albums at some point, I just want to see if you guys want to talk about that a little bit and how to get involved in collaborative albums, remix albums.
I suppose I'll start. Coming from the producer angle, it's incredibly rewarding to be able to sort of bring people together for a passion project. I mean, I've been watching, the incredible productions that OCR Remix has been putting out for the last, 2 decades? How long has OCR been around? Long time. But yeah, sort of following that entire trend, it's inspiring to see what can happen when you bring the talent of dozens, hundreds of people together. So what I tried with Materia, or I guess what sort of ended up happening, because the just response was overwhelming for Materia, was probably one of the most rewarding things I've done in the last 2 years. Just put out a gigantic album, produce, see that, yes, it is actually possible to create this, and in 3 months' time, no less. It's the result of just passion and creativity and talent all brought together under one umbrella. That's not really an answer, but I'm really happy that it happened.
What was the question?
The collab albums.
How do you become involved?
Yeah.
Oh.
How do you get involved with it?
Well, I think what I actually found really rewarding about the Materia project, which a lot of us were part of, is the way that a lot of the communication was done was through Facebook. And I think that was amazing that we started with a Facebook group and everyone got added, and you would just say, I have this really weird idea. And I actually have a representation of mine, because I've just had it under the desk. Who knows what I'm talking about? Raise your hand. Okay, so a little bit about me. So I had a hand injury that actually occurred while I was promoting stuff, and I came up with this idea mostly based off the fact that I wanted to write a thing, but my arms were currently on ice packs for a while, so I was like, what can I write with my face? With my voice for a while, and I said, I have an idea for the chocobo thing. So when I tell people what a chocobo is, I'm like, it looks like a chicken. But when I imagine chocobos, I think they're Muppet Show chickens, and therefore, all of the notes would be said as block. So it would be block, and I thought I would be nuts, because I sent that out, and I'm like, okay, it's out, I'm gonna put it out there. And I had so many people sign up wanting to be in the block choir, which we eventually called it, and it got so crazy that we recorded the block choir thing in the style of Muppet Chicken Chorus, and that we then were demanded to make a music video, which we did, and it's been super popular on YouTube, and I'm so happy. And a lot of my block choir here, which are also, a lot of them are smash opera people, but it's like the fact that that is now on an album that can be pressed and people have bought. And some people, I look at my louder info thingy-bipper, and some people have just got that song, and they've just want to listen to chickens in their car. And I'm like, this is the universe we're in. That talk about something made out of passion. I've been obsessed with Muppets since I was a kid, and I really just wanted to have Gonzo's girlfriend singing Chocobo. And it happened because people thought it was hilarious, people agreed, and it was goofy. That wasn't the weirdest thing. There was also a barbershop quartet Chocobo track on there, which was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Waltz to Choco Shop.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think, but that came out of a Facebook post, which was part of, this is a communal album made by a community of fans. And I just think that was the best thing. I don't think most of the tracks would be nearly as silly or various if we didn't have such a communication with that network or unity or collective. We just call it the Materia Collective, the collective of bodies that just like talking to each other. And a lot of us worked with each other on the second album too.
Yeah, it was a tremendous, if you want to work with a live musician at all, these collab projects are really great for that because like we're all kind of just helping each other out as a community, right? That we're all trying to pitch in and make this album happen. So I find I learned a tremendous lot about writing for certain instruments. Like if you don't necessarily need college training to be a composer, right? Like that's never been a requirement, but it could be difficult to write for like any sort of live setting because like you might just not know how the instruments work. So if you have a collab album when you can ask your friend who plays guitar, like my friend Mike, who I'm like, is this really hard? And he's like, it's the easiest thing I've ever played. And then like, I've learned something. Like, this is like a thing, I'm learning more about the instruments themselves so I can write more effectively. And also I gave my friend an opportunity to play something and got his foot in the door. Maybe he would like to arrange something in the future and now people know who he is. So it breeds more and more positive energy and collaboration. But I think they're a fantastic way to learn not only how to write for like instruments and arrange for different ensembles, but to be a team player because it's so important to manage all of the people that are contributing to like if you have like this epic track that needs like 40 different musicians plus a choir, right? That's a lot of people to be in charge of. You're going to learn how to manage real fast because otherwise the track won't come together. So it's just such a great learning experience. I can't recommend it enough. It's really a lot of fun. Well,
that and talk about like the 40-person track. I think, was it The Extreme had like the largest amount of participants. It was like this choir of a bazillion, or Galbadia, the one that John did. Oh, yeah, like we had all these people who I never even thought could sing wanting to jump into these ginormous person choir. Then you feel bad for the person who agreed to mix all those voices. But you have all these instrumentalists that admit that on some tracks they're like, oh man, it's an Eric Whitacre style, beautiful choir piece. And I've got people who I'm like, you like Eric Whitacre? And they're like, yeah! And I'm like, okay. And it was just beautiful how much variety we got out of so many different people. And it never would have happened if it wasn't just provided like, I need 7 million singers. We all could sing. Okay.
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that there are no longer gatekeepers that are sort of keeping you from doing really cool collaborative projects. Yeah. It's easy to learn, it's easy to find and connect with people and say, hey, I have this really crazy idea. Let's have a block choir, or let's put like 40 people like in a room, like or all across the world. Sure. Record them separately and then mix it. Virtual choir, it's a thing. It can happen. Communication is so easy, and managing and planning projects like this has become, well, not easy, but much more accessible. Yeah. So. Yeah.
It's like making use of the internet. Like nobody has an excuse to not make a video or a song or anything these days because we all have so many of these tools built into even like our phones or our iPads. Like anyone can have a recording studio really fast, and it's great.
So I just want to talk about a couple more things before we do Q&A. The don'ts of networking. Are there anything that we actually covered this a little bit in the previous question, but is there anything that you see people doing specifically that would have a negative impact, or that a story that you've done something that had a negative impact that you might just want to warn people in here about not doing?
I'll take that one. As an audio director, I've gotten a lot of interesting demos, and the fascinating thing about that. I mean, none are too lewd or anything bizarre, but well, I mean, Will Lecanto is an amazingly nice person, and I guess like before I even get into like some of the descriptions of the demos that that were not necessarily that I wasn't necessarily drawn to right away. These demos, when I found, did not actually reflect the personality or the rapport I had with the people themselves at all. Like, it's very difficult to actually present yourself in a demo, and I think being personable and somehow tracking people down at a GDC or in some way being able to talk with them on the phone and get a rapport that way is actually much better than just presenting material. And of course, material is easier to just spread far and wide to a whole bunch of people and shotgun yourself out there and get like, your name at least recognized. But the lesson's important that like who you are is really a critical factor. So Will Lecanto, like I said, amazingly professional, super great guy. I would really want to work with him, but before I actually met him, I got a demo of his at Midway, and it was a woman that was, I guess, his sister or something, and she had like these dreadlocks, no shirt. The hair kind of went down and covered, you know, and she had like a bass guitar that was covering like a crotchless like, you know, pants that she was wearing. So, granted, it got my attention, but I didn't actually listen to it right away. I was just like, okay, that's definitely very gimmicky and very attention-getting just for the, you know, getting attention. And I talked to him about it later, and he's like, yeah, that was really stupid. But, you know, I just, you know, I wanted to get people's sense. Like, well, yeah, I did, but I didn't like actually open it up because I was like, another composer that I know quite well now, Jeff Broadbent. Very talented guy. He's worked on a lot of projects since he started sending out his demos. But at first when I got his demos, I was like, I don't think I'm going to really work with this guy because he would include gimmicks as well. One of them was a handkerchief that was like, you know, very silky, and it said Jeff Broadbent, game composer on it. And I'm like, ooh, well, look at this. I just sort of drop it and, yes, and the silkiness represents the music or whatever it is. I'm like, but you know, when it's all said and done, I'm like, what? You know, what is a handkerchief going to do to really make me hire this guy? And I would listen to a couple of his tunes, and I'm like, yeah, I guess they're okay. But the gimmicky nature of it had nothing to do with how cool the actual guy was. He's really nice. He's really humble, but he's also super professional and very talented. So through all the years, I was just like, you know, if anything sort of gets my attention with something, it won't necessarily be the material. It is because these people reached out in some way, shape, or form to indicate, you know, some connection to me through voice or in-person discussion. And that's really what yielded what made me want to work with him.
So I'll just get to this, it's slightly off topic, slightly on topic, doesn't matter. Just two quick tips sort of from the trenches, because I used to work in-house and we would deal with, you know, external composers and like all kinds of people. And they're both about email. If you're contacting someone kind of out of the blue or, you know, whatever, it's a good chance that you won't hear back, and that's fine. I would recommend wait at least about a month or so, maybe this, give or take, before giving the next, like, hey, you know, whatever, let's talk again, you know, the next reminder or whatever. Or maybe a better idea is even to wait until a next, like, milestone, like maybe you can hit them up like, hey, you know, are you going to GDC? Are you going to this event? You know, wait a good while, because you never know. Maybe they missed your email, maybe they saw it, but they had a million things to do that day. They're probably not just ignoring you for the sake of ignoring you. That does happen, but it's not as frequent as you probably think. And the other one is when you do send an email to someone, for any reason actually, a great time to do it is, I would say, around 12:15 p.m. And the reason why is because they've gone to lunch and they'll come back, and no, it's hard to get right back to work after lunch for obvious reasons. And so that's when a lot of people read their emails, and they're more likely to respond to you at that point because they're happy. They just got fed, you know, they're not like, you know. So it's a good idea to send around that time. Don't send an email at like 3 a.m. It's very unprofessional, and they'll get it in the morning and be like, what is this, you know? Yeah.
And also, if you're ever doing anything with the whole aiming towards a lunch break period, remember what time zone the person that you're sending stuff is going to be in. Because, you know, especially if they're in another country. Just kind of keep that in mind. I've had some things from different folks who try to send something near the end of a day, and it's either 6 hours in one direction or the other, and it doesn't work. Also, sending emails on Friday, not as good as Monday, because by the time you hit Friday, especially if you're the sole in-house audio person, you just can't wait to get out of there. The last thing you want to do is read someone's email when you're trying to leave. So I always feel I'm more alert and willing to take on new information at Monday before the week gets crazy.
Sorry, one more thing about that. Google Boomerang is a wonderful tool. What you can do, if you use Gmail, with Boomerang, you can say, I want this email to be sent out at this exact date and time. So if like you have, you know, the idea to, oh, I want to send this email out, but it happens to be like 3 a.m., you can just schedule it to be sent on like, you know, whenever, the next day or whatever you want.
Does anybody have any other don'ts?
I mean, just simple. Don't be a pest. Don't be annoying. Don't be, you know, milquetoast.
Man.
You know.
Look at my demo, man.
Check out my SoundCloud.
Not all that.
Bro.
And and going back to the don't do this, yeah, definitely don't shove your business card and then run away because you obviously have someone more important to talk to, or another company that maybe you want to work for goes, you just want to seek them out. You're seen as that guy who's stabbing people in the eye, giving them paper cuts. Again, back to the having a conversation, being a human being,
Do not work for free.
Oh, and don't work for free if you can help it, because.
I actually disagree with that. And I think in certain situations, it might be in your best interest to get your foot in the door. This is more for helping a friend out, though. I have to say, you wouldn't. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't want to You don't want to make yourself look. It's a fine line, right? To portray yourself as someone who's willing to discuss salary and be flexible with the budget, but also you don't want to look like you're just whoring yourself out. I'll do anything to write music for your game. So you want to avoid putting across that persona because that does look unprofessional. It makes you look green, for lack of a better term. So if there's a friend that you know that is in a bind or something like that, that might be a situation in which it might benefit you to do the gig for free because they might pay you back down the line, or it's your friend, you want to help them out, but they are right. You don't want to approach a studio and right out the gate present yourself as I'll work for free under any circumstances, because that's probably not going to make you look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of hurts you in two possible ways. Either it shows that you really don't know how to value yourself and that you feel that you are cheap, or you'll find a company that is skeezy and they will take full advantage of you and you'll never see a dime of it. I'd say if you do have any sort of situation where you're just just please use it, please, I just want to get my work out there, make sure that you find a way to retain your music rights, so at least you still have the power to do what you can with the soundtrack that you've made, and they don't own it and you got nothing out of it. And who knows, they might not even put your name on it. So just protect yourself.
That's true. Yeah.
So before we do a quick Q&A, I know I left a bunch of stuff out, so you guys can add in if you think of anything, but some resources you can use to get started are specifically audiogang.org. That's the Game Audio Network Guild. That's a really great place to start building up a network. And also, we are having a gang hang / Materia Collective meetup / Super Smash Opera meetup tomorrow after the Super Smash Q&A at 9:30 at the Cadillac Ranch. It's right across the street. There's a Facebook event too, and if you're interested, you can just come up and talk to me at the end. But also GDC, the Game Developers Conference, and igda.org. Those are all resources that you can use right away, and I'm sure you guys have more also.
Yeah, Game Audio Forum is also a Facebook group. It's very informative. There's also some more specific ones, if you're specifically trying to get into music implementation, there's a group for WISE users, and I believe there's an FMOD group as well. WISE Wizards.
Wise Wizards, which is actually at the moment invite only.
Oh.
But it's okay. It's if that means if you've heard about it here, it's not by any means exclusive, right? That doesn't mean the cat's out of the bag. It means if anybody wants to join, try to somehow find one of us.
Yeah, talk to us about
on there, and we'll talk to Jack Menhorn, who's I guess the guy that started it, and he can invite you and whatever.
Yeah. And FMOD Tips and Tricks has one too. Also, I think there's a Game SoundCon is a really good conference to check out. It's a great place to learn about the beginnings. They have a couple different tracks. You can go as someone really green, and you just want to learn about what exactly is involved, the difference between normal music and game audio. There's a pro track. There's a couple class sessions like the one Sebastian and I went to on FMOD and WISE. Another really good one to go to is there's designingsound.com or .org, and they also started a new one, Designing Music, I think, maybe, that started this year. I don't know if they're run by the same guy, but those are all resources online. It's mostly done in a blog format, but there's a lot of really good write-ups. And, IASIG, the Interactive Audio Special Interest Group, they talk a little bit more about sound design stuff, but it's more tech, there's papers, there's a lot of free information. They also run one of the mixers that happens during GDC, which is worth checking out if you guys are ever there. But yeah.
So are there any questions?
Should we have them talk in the mic?
I've had experience kickstarting an album. Mike. Does anybody have any advice? Please don't use your voice.
Kickstarter album.
Yeah, I just did a Kickstarter. I'd been working on an anime album for the last 8 years, just on and off, in my spare time. And so I put up a Kickstarter. The advice I would give is make sure that, well, it's more just a general comment. I think it's easiest to do a successful Kickstarter if you're already pretty far in the work that you're doing. Like all the music was finished in my album. I just needed money for like some more recordings and mixing and the album layout and stuff. So I only asked for like $1,500. But I showed some samples of the work. I had a friend of mine do an animation. So it was like an anime intro that used some of the music that I'd written as the background music. And I just tried to make it as compelling and as visual as possible. And we ended up with like over 200%. I mean, it was shockingly successful. I don't understand why all these people I didn't even know were trying to donate to this. I was confusing, but yeah, in general, I think just show that you are already, show that there's a guarantee that you're going to release this thing. Because Kickstarter is a risk. People could get nothing at all for their money, so show them that there's very mitigated risk in that.
More questions?
Right now, you guys were mentioning FMOD and WISE and exact at the end. Do you guys consider that something important that game composers should use, or just like a luxury?
I guess. So the nice thing about FMOD and WISE, one, they're free, and there's a lot of great teaching tools on there. If you want to work primarily in game audio with music, one big thing to learn early on is how to do adaptive music, or how to do music that can definitely move in a non-linear fashion. I think working in something like FMOD and WISE that helps prepare you to think about how to divide your music and how to craft it to be in those kind of scenarios. And a lot of it is great because you can test how things will go as if it's in a real game with a queue system. So you don't even need a full game setup to at least see how you would break things up. And a lot of it is presented, especially FMOD, in a normal DAW style. So if you're used to a normal editor, it should not be a super crazy learning curve. But there are a lot of different softwares out there. Some companies build their own middleware systems like FMOD and WISE. But I feel getting a basic foundation of how those function makes you more valuable whenever you're applying to things. Because if you understand how to craft things better to make the tech lives easier for the tech team, it just gives you another step up. For doing like a demo with the best way would be if you become friends with some game designers or do things like the Global Game Jam. I know it was hosted by MAGFest here last year because it was one of the main hotspots. If you can write music using one of those softwares and actually get it into an actual game and have that game as a playable demo, or you have the time to learn to make one for yourself or buy an existing template that is available through some things. I think School of Game Audio, the Game Audio Institute sell pre-made games that then you can add music into in that format. That's probably the best way to do it.
Okay, so I think maybe one more question,
Hope
and
that
then
helped.
we have to
You can ask me after.
go.
So you brought up the idea of not working for free or anything, but I have a friend who's working on maybe like a fan game based on another series, and maybe like since the series already has a big following, do you think it would be beneficial to get involved in music for that?
I actually want to follow up with that. It's not necessarily not working for free, because there's a distinction between working for free and working for nothing. So for example, if there's just no budget at all, maybe there can be some kind of other arrangement. I mean, bartering system is alive and well, or you can, if the game, for example, starts generating revenue, that the composer takes a percentage. For example, fan games are great. I think they're a fantastic experience, much like any kind of other fan or passion project, because most of the time the people that are involved really want to do it, because they will dedicate time into making something cool happen. So yes, I think that's a really cool thing to do.
Okay, I think that's it. If you have any more questions, we'll probably be outside. I think there's another panel right after here. Thanks so much for coming, and also thanks for being on the panel.
How do you do this?
I have really small hands.